fashioned from oak, strong enough to crush armor. Other weapons capable of delivering deadly blows. Sometimes in martial arts, it's all in the force, being with you. Kobudo marshals that tradition. Despite the image of refinement and sometimes spirituality, martial arts grew up on the battlefield. They were the warrior's means of survival. Nick Pettas is the warrior's descendant. His battles are fought in karate and other combat sports. But he wants to know why the combat techniques of the samurai have survived.
Welcome to Samurai Spirit, and I'm your host, Nick Pettas. In today's program, we're going to find out exactly what Kobudo is, which literally means ancient martial art. Originating on the battlefield of the samurai warrior, it is a style based on one concept only: survival. And here we are at Tokyo Station, just about to get on a bullet train to go down to find an excellent dojo to demonstrate exactly what Kobudo is. Many martial arts emphasize on a spiritual awareness, but Kobudo is all about defeating one's opponent. The message is clear and unclouded. I want to find out how Kobudo embodies the samurai spirit.
Nicholas heads to the foot of Mount Fuji. It's the home ground of a school of Kobudo with a history of well over 400 years. The search starts here.
And as you can see, we've now made our way into the dojo. And these guys are already practicing. Let's go have a look at it. You have a look at what these guys are doing? I'm just gonna walk inside and check it out. I think it's the sensei sitting over at the back of the dojo. My name is Nick Pettas, and I'm here to
It's my pleasure.
Spirit. Very nice to meet you.
Yoshimitsu Katsuse Kagehiro is the 15th heir of the Shinto-ryu school of the Kenpo. He's one of a handful of Budoka martial artists who have mastered multiple Kobudo techniques, including sword fighting. The Shinto-ryu tradition was born in an age of feudal war. Its insights are handed down generation by generation to a single heir based on skill, not family ties. That's how Katsuse assumed his position. He was the one selected to inherit the scroll containing the teachings of the school. Demonstrations in the Shinto-ryu tradition take on a real edge. They use actual swords. The reason is a preference for reality. Simulated swords would not have been used in actual combat on the battlefield.
I was hoping maybe, if it's not too much of an interruption in the training, that maybe you could tell me a little bit about what Kobudo really is.
You mentioned Kobudo, but we haven't reached that level yet. At this point, the emphasis is still very much on technique. Killing techniques, to speak frankly. That makes what we're doing Kobujutsu, not Kobudo. Many years of training are needed to become a master of Kobujutsu. Only then can one achieve the spiritual benefits associated with the pursuit of Budo, the way of martial arts.
Nicholas asked to see a demonstration of the main techniques of the Shinto-ryu. They all involve actual weapons. That does wonders for concentrating the body and the mind. Kusarigama Jutsu. These are techniques for using a sickle and chain to devastating ends. Naginata Jutsu. These techniques makes use of naginata, a weapon in which a blade similar to that of a sword is mounted on a long staff. Jojutsu. A hard wooden staff is swiftly manipulated to overcome and overwhelm an opponent. Jutsu. These techniques are made to order for close combat. They're used to grapple with an opponent and deliver the final blow with a short sword. Iai Kenpo, drawing the sword in a flash from all sorts of positions. The opponent is slashed before he has a chance to react. Although demonstrations are conducted with real swords, Katsusei does not choose the form in advance. He says knowing what's coming would deplete the tension. Training for combat is done in conditions as close to actual combat as possible.
Wow, Sensei, that was just unbelievable. Thank you very much. I mean, it was like taking part of some ancient ritual or something. All the techniques that I saw here today, everything was just so focused and so intense. And everyone was like, the energy was just incredible.
I tell my students to practice over and over until they're able to move without thinking. Kobudo is all about experiencing the feeling of combat.
A huge army descending upon an enemy general. A samurai in that situation had no time to contemplate which weapon to use or what technique to employ. He had to depend on his instincts to guide him, instincts forged through training. The techniques could save the life of his lord and his own. Battlefield tactics reached a new level of sophistication in the 13th century as warriors learned to use the bow and arrow on horseback. Archery and mounted attacks offered the opportunity to vanquish an opponent with a fusillade of force. At the same time, weapons were developed for fighting on foot while maintaining a distance. This led to Naginata Jutsu. Then came the introduction of the spear and the development of Sojutsu. Later on, the spread of firearms engendered the rise of artillery. The details may change, but throughout history, development of new weapons and methods of combat invariably led to the invention of fighting techniques. Ancient documents provide evidence of this pattern throughout human history. Weaponry and ways of using those weapons are like strands of the double helix in DNA. They are intertwined and inseparable. More than 300 schools of Kobudo exist today with their own collections of techniques. Each school has preserved the sagacity of the samurai and their survival skills.
Maybe if it's not too much of a inconvenience, you could teach me a couple of techniques. I would like to learn something.
All right.
The first technique, Kogusoku Jutsu, makes use of a short sword for close combat.
We'll will be starting to practice with this small wooden sword, as you can see. And it's got a plastic scabbard for practicing.
You're supposed to use a real sword, but I'll let you use a wooden sword this time. Understand? A real sword would kill you.
Did you guys get that?
Okay, begin.
Oh man, that was scary.
The fierce attack has given Nicholas the shock of his life.
You sure did. Here, use this hand. Yes, and strike like this. Then bend upwards.
I really can't explain how this feels right now. Okay, let's try it.
Okay.
You need to do it much faster, though.
Okay. Slowly, okay.
Slowly. Says he's laughing at me because I'm too slow.
Next, Kusarigama Jutsu. A metal ball and chain entangles the enemy's sword. The sickle? That's for his neck. Kusarigama Jutsu is intended to neutralize an opponent who's armed with a sword. Throwing the metal ball accurately, though, doesn't come naturally. The technique requires years of practice. To find out how much pressure the Kusarigama exerts, we had a staff member wear a small camera. Enemies can't foresee when the launch will come, so they keep their distance. The Kusarigama has yet another deterring effect. The opponent's neck can also be a target. Nicholas, now you're the target.
In reality, the enemy is moving. But here's what the receiving end is like.
Okay.
I feel like a caged animal here. Get me out of this thing. Oh my God. That was the scariest thing I've done in years. Well, you guys should have tried that.
It's not just about wrapping a chain around the neck. Remember, there's supposed to be a metal ball on the end. No, it's soft.
Obviously, this is for practicing, so it's not really that hard. It's kind of hard, but still.
I'm going to aim this at you. If it hits you, you lose. So try to avoid it.
Practice starts without any further explanation.
You gotta imagine that, because this is for practice, right? That's just a little paper ball or whatever it is. But in real life, that would have been an iron ball. And now it's just sort of cracked my head open here.
Here, Hiro, take my place.
Using the Kusarigama well requires a lot of practice.
Go. Of course you can. Of course not. Go.
Hey, come on.
Oh, don't worry. It's not going to fly straight anyway.
Not bad for a first try. At least it flew. A real kusarigama can do much more than that.
Oh my god, that is scary. Here comes in a longer one, and that iron thing on the end of it is even longer. Now look at the difference in what we were just playing with. Like that. And this? Oh my god. Oh! Oh, no. No, no way, man.
The blade is sharp enough to cut open an enemy's throat. The density of the iron ball can crack open a skull. That was the reality of actual combat.
This is not good for practice.
できないですね。
No. And you can see why.
Imagine that on top of your head, and I got hit a couple of times on the head here. I would have smashed my face in. I would have been broken to pieces and bones.
Next, Iai Kenpo, a slash and a flash. Nicholas is going to use an edgeless practice sword. Katsuse believes the essence of Iai Kenpo is drawing the sword to attack the moment one senses an intent to kill, even if the perceived threat is coming from a stranger. Sneak attacks and vendettas were common in the days of the samurai. Katsuse wants to retain that sort of high tension in his training.
We're practicing how to draw the sword step by step. But in reality, you would draw your sword and slash the moment you sensed an attack. You have to be ready at all times. Well, yes, because this is for real. I have to be prepared in case you decide to attack while talking to me. So go ahead, anytime.
Thrusting the tip toward the enemy demands balance.
The difference between Kobudo and modern Budo, or sports, is that Kobudo has no rules. In actual combat, you don't have the luxury of choosing your weapon. You have to make do with what you have. If you don't have a sword, you have to fight with whatever's available, even if it's just a stone. That's the sort of mentality you need. You have to be alert at all times and be aware of what you can use in a threatening situation. Yes, winning means surviving. Yes, that's what it's all about. If your opponent dies, you win. It's as simple as that. You survive. Survival is the ultimate goal of Kobudo.
The spirit of Kobudo survives in more than 300 schools across Japan. Each maintains a distinct style of its own. Some emphasize actual fighting techniques, while others concentrate on preserving the kata forms and passing them along. Still other schools emphasize the importance of Kobudo as a form of Japanese culture. A shrine in the city of Kashima is said to be the site where Kobudo originated. The shrine itself has a history that extends beyond 1,400 years. Its deity is the god of Budo. Behold, the oldest sword in Japan. To protect the sword and the shrine, priests in ancient times became skilled swordsmen. Their distinctive sword technique has been preserved by the Kashima Shinto-ryu. It maintains a dojo training center right next door. Kashima Shinto-ryu carries with it many sacred rituals and ceremonies.
あられふりあられふり鹿島の宮の御宝いつの生き立ち山
The scroll, handed down over the ages, documents the techniques of swordsmanship developed hundreds of years ago. One characteristic movement involves pointing the blade towards oneself. It's called onken. Onken symbolizes the expelling of evil, greed, and distracting thoughts to purify the spirit before putting the sword to use. Their clothing also is a type of its own. It's said to represent the attire that ancient priests used to wear. Yasusada Okami is a master of Kashima Shinto-ryu. He says tradition continues to speak through the school to which he belongs.
Japanese martial arts are said to have derived from the Kashima Shinto-ryu. Kendo, for example, has become popular worldwide. But it can be said, and I think this is true, that the systematic foundations of Kendo were formed by our school. Japanese swordsmanship is traced to Kashima Shinto-ryu. And Kashima Shinto-ryu is intrinsically associated with Kashima Shrine. So we have a long and distinguished history. I'm very proud of this continuous tradition and the fact that we are the founders of Japanese Budo. I'd like to see the school grow even further.
While some schools and masters are keen on preserving traditions, some masters actually search for ways to adapt Kobudo to the more modern times.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Nick Pettas.
Hello, I'm Kono.
Yoshinori Kono has been carrying out independent research on the teachings of master swordsmen and the ancient records that still exist. His efforts to discern the secrets behind the techniques have led him to a new realm of Kobudo. Kono is a strong believer in self-discipline. That is to say, he is both strong and a believer. Constant training has allowed him to acquire superhuman agility. But this master is still searching for ways to maximize the potential of human ability.
The classical martial arts are different from Kendo and Judo and other modern forms. The driving force behind my research is the desire to recreate the world of the ancient masters. It's a long and winding road.
Kono has concluded that the movements of the samurai who risked their lives on the battlefield were completely different from those of modern Budo. He's restored the motions to show the distinctions. It's a trip back in time, when mastery meant the difference between life and death.
The major difference between modern martial arts and classical martial arts is that the ancient masters did not brace their legs or kick.
No twisting, no building up of energy, and no bracing. Those are the conclusions that Kono has drawn after investigating the approach of the masters of long ago. In modern Budo, and sports for that matter, twisting, building up, and bracing are often considered essential to an explosive release of force. Kono says the samurai had a different approach.
Let's say you're attacked like this. You'd obviously try to evade the attack, but if your feet were firmly planted on the ground, your lower body would be slashed. In boxing, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be hit in the hips. But to evade a strike from above, you need to be agile. Otherwise, you'll end up being slashed in the hips. First of all, you should deflect the blow with a dagger or something like this. If you try to evade the blow, you'll end up being followed. So instead, you should try to close in on the attacker, inviting him to strike your head. Don't evade. What you should do is to move in toward him and then move to the side. These actions are executed almost simultaneously.
Kono says movements in an instant are attainable without bracing, building up, or twisting. Attainable, but that level is not easily achieved. What would the ancient masters do if Nicholas were to deliver a downward strike with full force? The moment Nicholas starts to attack, Kono moves in a flash to avoid the sword and slashes Nicholas's wrists. He does this within the time Nicholas takes to deliver the strike. Nicholas is fast, but Kono is faster.
Okay, I think we've had enough for today. I think he made his point. Even with the real bamboo sword, I was not fast enough. 本当早いですね。でも本来ならもうそこは行かないですよね。
Yes, you wouldn't have a chance of launching a full-scale attack. Before the strike, I'd have moved to the side and slashed your wrist.
Well, as we clarified before, the best defense is an offense.
Kono believes the samurai of years past used a special technique to hold the sword.
Assume a proper stance. Like this. Yes. Now I'm going to try to swipe your sword. I want you to avoid getting hit. Move your sword out of the way. I'll start from here. Should be easy. Now I'm going to bring my hands closer together. Nowadays, everyone holds the sword with their hands apart. But according to my research, people used to hold the sword like this, with the hands together.
He's certainly right about modern swordsmanship. The current approach to Iaido and Kendo leaves plenty of space between the hands. Kono's research, however, suggests hands together creates a different relationship with the sword, one that involves the entire body. That altered relationship affects the handling of the weapon and the results.
This exercise shows the difference between using the entire body or just the arms. My feet are relaxed. It's like a flash. The sword comes right at you. Like this.
I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I mean, I can't stop laughing because I can't get out of the speed compared to what he did before. When he was standing and just saying, well, we're just going to try the first one, and then he explained what he's going to do in the second time he did it, then he used the whole body and it became about twice as fast. And if you saw in the beginning, I was able to, get out of there, but now he hits it every time. And I felt kind of confident before.
It's easier to move the sword with your hands apart. If it's easy to move the sword, you end up using your arms. With hands together, it's harder. But since you can't move the sword just with your arms, you end up using your entire body. That gives you much more freedom than if you were to only rely on the arms.
The speed tells the story. With hands apart, making contact with Nicholas's sword consumes 0.5 seconds. Nicholas was able to detect the start of the movement. Check the clock. When the hands are brought together, contact comes in less than half the time, just 0.24 seconds. That leaves Nicholas no time to react.
If you brace yourself, you're letting your opponent know you're about to do something. Take boxing, for instance. Because of the way boxers move, they can easily evade or deflect a punch because their bodies telegraph what's coming. So they're prepared for it. If you had no warning, though, even a minor punch would be devastating. Not letting the opponent know what you're about to do has always been considered very important. An element of surprise makes an attack more effective.
Kono believes that his research into the movements of Kobudo in the past can be applied to sports in the present. He holds workshops throughout Japan to convey the essence of Kobudo and show how it can be applied in other disciplines. This high school rugby team has a well-deserved reputation for strength. The players are packed with power. Many weigh over 100 kilograms. We've asked Kono to show us how Kobudo might make them even more formidable.
It looks like these guys are ready to go for it. Well, anyway, I don't know much about rugby, and probably most of you guys out there don't know anything about rugby either. So let's see what a normal tackle or a normal defense looks like.
Tackling is a basic movement in rugby. Kono is 60 years old and weighs only 59 kilograms. Under normal circumstances, he would be easy prey for these big kids.
There are various ways of tackling and being tackled. A common practice in rugby would be to try and crush the player. But you'd need to use a lot of force in order to succeed, because the player is going to try and repel the action. You wouldn't be able to crush the player just by pressing down with your hand. In fact, you'd actually be directing him towards you. But if you were to deflect the attack,
I don't know, I fell over. No.
ちょっと次誰か来いよ。はい、いるかいるかい。はい、お願いします。はい。今本当に自信あったよね。
Yeah, I applied a strong tackle.
本気で。
Yeah.
で、ダメ。
No.
これはぜひ覚えて。
Yeah.
if you brace yourself against a tackle, you end up trying to crush the opponent with your weight. But that's not a very effective use of force. Instead of bracing yourself and pressing down with your arm, all you need to do is evade the tackle and change the direction of the opponent's force. That's easier said than done, though.
Tackling normally involves meeting force with force. In order to overcome the assault, a player has to be able to outdo the opponent's power. But Kono doesn't put much stock in the conventional wisdom. Instead of bracing himself, he evaded the tackle and redirected the opponent's force. As a result, he only needed a small amount of force to repel the offensive. The same principle works with swords. A battle of blades is not about force. A master swordsman uses his entire body to manipulate the weapon and break his opponent's balance. Even a master as slight and slender as Kono will prevail. He's got hundreds of years of samurai know-how backing him up.
I'd never heard of Kobudo before, and I was amazed at how he rendered my tackle useless like that, with just a simple movement.
The coach was equally impressed.
Our main strategy so far has been to just grab the ball and run straight into the other camp. But the movements of Kobudo open up new possibilities, different ways to make use of the opponent's force. I can see tremendous potential for all of our players, our entire team, to apply Kobudo to rugby.
Where do you feel your ultimate goal is for you?
It's very true that ordinary people can do amazing things when they find themselves in life-threatening situations. They're able to conjure up an almost superhuman strength. My goal is to summon up such a hidden power, just as the samurai did. And this is what I give special importance to during my training.
Kobudo is all about acquiring the means to survive. The more I learned about Kobudo, the more I understood the harsh reality that the samurai faced day and night. But what compels people to pursue Kobudo today? I have to find out.
Nicholas is back in Shizuoka, surrounded by Shinto-ryu Kenpo instructors from all over the country. They've come together here for a workshop and training session.
What drives these people to risk their lives for a martial art? Watching them practice, I understand that there's more to it than just wanting to become a master of weaponry or fighting. The answer lies somewhere deeper, but only a selected few will ever be able to dig down to that level.
Talking about attaining spiritual awareness is easy. But I think that's far beyond the level of what we are doing. You can only achieve spiritual enlightenment after devoting yourself to training for many years. I don't think people today are serious enough to reach that level of perfection. Right. No, I don't. In the past, people risked their lives in training. You don't see that anymore.
Teachers can offer instruction in the forms of Kobudo, and students can learn them. But conveying the spirit of Kobudo is a matter that exists on a different plane. Katsuse says each individual has to find the way for himself.
When you train, you experience pain, especially when you lose. Yes, if you've experienced pain, you're careful not to inflict pain on others. But children today, they don't know how to fight. So a simple quarrel can escalate to violence and sometimes even murder. You might say it can't be helped because they've never gotten involved in a fight. They've never experienced pain. When we were kids, we were always fighting. So we learned from experience when to stop before injuring someone or making him cry. But nowadays, children aren't even allowed to fight. right? Because they've never experienced pain. When they do fight, they fight till the bitter end. We're living in a violent age.
You
know what I mean? Living in peace is best, but I think fighting and experiencing pain are important too. Through that, you learn when to stop and how to avoid hurting others. That's what the pursuit of Budo should be about. But modern Budo is full of rules. It's filled with competition too. There's no room to understand the pain of others.
Kobudo was born in the age of the samurai. In the modern age, the spirit of Kobudo lives on. It is about cultivating compassion and benevolence to others through the unforgiving training of oneself.
And that was Kobudo for this time. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. What did you learn today? What did I learn today? I'll tell you what I learned today. The foundation that all the martial arts I've done up until now has been based on something what I will call sports. With a certain set of rules within whatever we choose to do. For me it was karate in the beginning and I then moved on to kickboxing. There are still rules. What did Kobudo show me today? One thing. Kobudo is based on the foundation of the ultimate goal for all martial arts. Survival. One slice on your leg, one chop on your head, you lose that leg or you lose that head. And that's what it's all about. The ultimate goal is survival here. There are no rules in Kobudo except for the fact that you want to be the last one standing. Now the importance of all this comes down to one thing, that through your experiences through the martial arts, whatever pain you feel gives you the experience of suffering. And if you have suffered yourself, you also want to make sure that people around you do not suffer in the same way. And that makes you a better person. And hence that makes the world a better place to live in. Because you understand the exact limit to what your body can take. You also understand the limit of other people's bodies and minds and hearts and souls, that everything comes together like that. Now this, of course, is something that we can learn a lot from. My way of viewing martial arts from this day on will be changed forever, for the better. Because the importance of walking on that fine line between life and death creates something extremely more important than just going through the techniques and going through the motions. Kobudo teaches me how to live a little bit more each day. Walking away from this program, I feel a different man. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope to see you next time, where our journey to go out and look for more martial arts will continue, and the samurai spirit still lives out there.